Pressure often turns ordinary thinking into laser focus. When the clock ticks down or the stakes jump, your brain gives a quick wake-up jolt, like an espresso shot for attention. So you spot the obvious answer you missed and act. The aim isn't to banish pressure, but to steer it. When first face a deadline, first do a 5-minute focus sprint. Pick one tiny target and go. Instead of saying, first am an anxious person, try saying, first do this quick reset. That change shifts what you do, not who you are. You'll find out why pressure helps when it backfires, and 3 simple moves to use right away. So pressure becomes your secret weapon, not your kryptonite. 1. The role of pressure. Pressure changes how the body and brain respond. It raises alertness, quickens breathing and heartbeat, and nudges attention toward what matters most. Small doses of that push act like a spotlight, making details clearer and choices simpler. First, notice my thoughts tighten around the essential facts when a deadline looms, and that focus often leads to faster, cleaner decisions. That spotlight effect means first cut through distractions and prioritize faster. In practical terms, a surgeon triages problems during an operation, a coder zeroes in on the one faulty line that breaks the build, and a salesperson remembers the right statistic to close a deal. When first face pressure, first do the same. First scan for the most important parts and set lesser things aside. This sharpening helps with routine tasks and fast decisions, though it can make me overlook creative or long-term options. Pressure also stirs chemical changes that wake the brain up. Adrenaline rushes in, making senses feel crisper and reactions quicker. Think of it as switching the brain from a slow cruise to a sport mode. But sport mode has limits. Too much pressure floods the system and first tense up, ideas freeze, and mistakes creep in. In that state, first might latch onto the first solution first see, even if a better one exists. Accountability and visible consequences amplify the effect. Working toward a public deadline, presenting in front of others, or knowing someone will check my work makes my attention tighten and my effort rise. First, perform differently when someone else is watching. Usually more carefully, sometimes more nervously. Short, clear pressures tend to sharpen performance. Open-ended, high-stakes pressure without support can overwhelm anyone. Used wisely, pressure becomes a tool. First, set mini deadlines to create helpful urgency. Rehearse under simulated stress to get comfortable. And pick the moment to let creativity breathe when pressure would be harmful. The role of pressure is not simply to push or break. It tunes how first think, trade-offs, and all, helping me act faster and focus clearer when the situation calls for it. 2. Why we avoid it. People dodge pressure because it feels like a direct threat to how we want to look and feel. When attention is on us, mistakes seem louder, and being judged by others becomes a real cost. In everyday life, that shows up as skipping a presentation, avoiding a tough conversation, or turning down a job interview. Practical examples that make the point plain without needing any fancy analysis. The body reacts first, and the mind follows. A sudden sense of high stakes sends a rush of alertness and discomfort into the system. It's useful in small doses, but unpleasant enough that first pull back. First delay, starting problems first should be tackling, and first give myself small, plausible reasons to wait. My brain files the request under later, like an overworked intern who loves coffee and dislikes responsibility, and suddenly avoiding feels like self-preservation rather than weakness. Fear of failure and the worry about looking incompetent are powerful avoiders. Someone who has been criticized for a past mistake learns that staying silent is safe. First, hold back from asking questions in meetings, because it feels easier than risking a moment of awkwardness. That pattern gets reinforced. Avoiding reduces immediate discomfort, so the habit gets stronger even if the cost later is bigger. Perfectionism and high self-expectations push people away from pressure too. The thought of producing something imperfect can be so uncomfortable that not starting seems preferable. First stall on projects first care about, because finishing imperfectly would bruise how first see myself. The result is a tidy illusion of control, no outcome, no blame, but also no progress. Finally, Practical complications make avoidance sensible at times. Pressure often arrives layered on top of already busy lives, conflicting goals, or unclear instructions. When the path forward is messy, choosing the quieter route is a pragmatic reaction, not a moral failing. Recognizing that helps expose the reasons behind avoidance without finger-pointing. It makes the behavior easier to understand and, when useful, change. 3. What happens to ideas? Pressure reshapes how ideas move from fuzzy thoughts into something you can act on. Under a deadline, attention tightens and the messy pile of possibilities starts to look more like a few clear paths. For routine or well-practiced tasks, this often helps. A surgeon or an ER nurse makes quick, useful decisions because their mind zeroes in on the most relevant options. In fast chess games, players pick good moves fast instead of searching for perfection. The brain becomes a bouncer that ushers a few promising ideas in and keeps the rest on the sidewalk. A big change is pruning. First, do cut away the weaker or more complicated ideas first. Instead of sprawling creativity, pressure forces selection. That means mental shortcuts come out of play. Simple rules like pick the easiest fix that works or start with what first no guide choices. Product teams in week-long sprints do this all the time. They drop fancy features and ship a basic version that solves the core problem. It isn't always glamorous. It is practical. Like editing a grocery list at checkout, priorities get decided quickly. Pressure also rearranges ideas, pushing combinations and quick prototypes. When time is short, first, do mash two simple ideas together and test the hybrid immediately. Musicians on stage combine riffs. Kitchen staff invent a new dish by swapping one ingredient. That quick mixing can produce surprising value. On the flip side, pressure can squeeze out deep, off-the-wall thinking. Wild, high-risk ideas often need space to grow and won't survive the first round of triage. So if a problem truly needs novel thinking, separate the wild exploration from the sprint-like selection and timebox both. How you feel about the pressure changes which ideas survive. If first treat pressure as a challenge, first do take bolder, more creative leaps. If first see it as a threat, first do play conservatively and choose safe bets. Athletes and performers show both outcomes. Some flourish in the clutch, others tighten up. Practical tricks help channel pressure productively. Force a quick sketch of 3 options, then pick one to prototype. Set a mini deadline for idea generation, followed by a brief selection window. Commit in advance to testing one risky idea and one safe fallback. Small routines like these let pressure act like a useful editor rather than a blunt axe. 4. The illusion of freedom. Unlimited choice often feels like freedom, but it usually makes decisions heavier and slower. The term paradox of choice captures this simply. More options can increase worry, not happiness. Mental energy gets spent weighing tiny differences, and decision fatigue sets in. That moment when even small choices start to feel exhausting because your short-term mental space, the part of your brain that juggles active thoughts, is tapped out. A familiar scene helps show this, standing in front of a streaming menu with hundreds of shows and feeling paralyzed. Another example is a blank document that offers infinite directions, and suddenly my once good ideas scatter. Cooking shows like Chopped put chefs under tight rules and limited ingredients, and the result is often sharper, more creative dishes. Hackathons force teams into short, focused bursts to build working prototypes. Constraints push people to pick a clear path instead of debating forever. Limits work because they narrow the field for attention and force priorities to emerge. When options are trimmed, heuristics, simple mental shortcuts, kick in and save effort. First, do set rules that switch my brain out of analysis mode and into action. Pick 3 candidates, choose the middle option, or make the default choice and move on. Those small promises reduce the noise and let useful ideas bubble up, without turning thinking into a marathon. Practical moves are straightforward and useful. Build a tiny decision framework. Limit choices to 3 for menus or features. Use templates for repetitive tasks, and set a Pomodoro timer to give pressure a friendly deadline. Adopt a capsule wardrobe or a fixed morning routine so fewer small decisions steal attention. Keep it playful if you can, less like punishment and more like a game where constraints are the rules that make creativity compete and win. 5. Pressure as a constant companion. Pressure shows up in everyday places, inboxes with unread messages, meetings that need decisions, and the tiny internal voice nudging me toward the next task. It's a steady signal that something matters. Not always pleasant, but useful because it pushes priorities to the surface and helps me cut through distractions. Moderate amounts of pressure sharpen attention and force quick trade-offs, which explains why athletes sprint faster when a race is on the line and why a looming deadline can turn scattered notes into a focused plan. In high-stakes jobs, pressure is more like a co-worker you can't fire. Air traffic controllers and emergency teams train to keep their minds clear while the noise rises. Chefs rehearse service until timing becomes muscle memory. Musicians run through nightmarish passages until the fingers know the route. First practice the same trick. First run mock interviews. First time my talks. First rehearse answers until they feel automatic. That rehearsal makes pressure predictable, and predictability makes thoughts less likely to jam. Pressure doesn't just force speed. It changes the way first think. Quick categories replace long comparisons. First, look for the most important thing and do that first. Simple checklists and single-step goals become priceless tools because they reduce the mental load. When interruptions arrive, first pause long enough to name the reaction. First say, out loud or in my head, first feel rushed, which is enough to stop reflexive mistakes. Short breathing breaks or a two-sentence plan often clear the fog faster than hammering on with frantic energy. When pressure becomes constant, adaptation matters more than escape. Small, planned stressors like short practice runs or timed tasks build tolerance without wrecking morale. First, carve micro deadlines into big projects, so the pressure is steady but manageable. At the same time, first watch for traps, tunnel vision, snap decisions, and the fatigue that accumulates when pressure never lets up. To keep thinking well, first balance exposure with simple recovery. Clear priorities, brief rituals that reset attention, and the occasional laugh at my own dramatic inner monologues. Pressure stays by my side. The trick is to treat it as a steady coach, not an enemy. Quick recap. Pressure narrows your focus, so you spot what's important. It gives you a short alertness boost, like a little cognitive espresso that speeds decision-making, and small, practice pressure helps you perform. You do feel a rush, you do tighten up, and sometimes you do freeze. Totally normal and not a sign you failed. The trick is to name the pressure, break the task into tiny steps, and practice under mild pressure so your brain learns to use that rush as fuel instead of letting it trip you up. If you enjoyed it, or if it made you smile, please like, subscribe, and share a short story in the comments about how pressure helped you think better. In the next video, we'll explore the difference between being stuck and running for cover. Thanks for watching, and now turn pressure into your secret advantage.